Author is funded by the Pacific Northwest Writers Association, supporting writers from pen to publication since 1955. To learn more about the PNWA and their yearly conference, please go to pnwa.org. Hi, this is Bill Kenower of Author Magazine, and today I'm in the Seattle home of Nancy Pearl, author of George and Lizzie. Nancy, welcome to Author.
Thank you, Bill. It's great to be with you.
So, Nancy, this is not a conversation I ever thought I would have with you in that seat, having written a novel.
I know. Who'd have thunk it?
That is fascinating.
It's like unbelievable, and I never thought I would be in this seat talking about a novel that I wrote.
Now, I don't know all the backstory behind you writing this, but I have to assume, having read this, that this was not the first piece of fiction you ever attempted in your life.
So I wrote a lot of poetry in high school and college, and got some nice rewards for it.
Right.
Then sometime in my 30s, the lines that used to come to me as poetry started coming as prose. And I stopped writing poetry, and one day a line came to me, which was, "My mother talked to us all of the time," or all the time. And I thought, that's not a line of poetry, that is prose. And so I wrote a short story with that as the first line, and it was published in Red Book magazine back in the day.
Really?
Long time ago.
Wow.
And then Red Book, the editor, loved it, and she said, "Oh, send us everything that you write." And so I, would finish a short story and send it to her, and she would say, "Oh, the writing is so good, but it's too sad for our readers." So, after a while, it was not an easy time in my life that I was doing it.
This was in your 30s.
This was in my 30s.
Starting your career as a librarian?
I was raising children, and we were in Oklahoma, a place that I was not very compatible with. So there was no way I was not going to write a depressing story.
Right.
And so I gave up, really stopped writing at that point.
It didn't occur to you to try to send to all the myriad literary journals who would have said, "Make it sadder, what's wrong with you?"
Exactly, right, no.
No, that was it.
Nothing. I didn't do anything with it. About 7 years ago or so, I had, so this is the origin story of George and Lizzie.
Yeah.
So I had foot surgery on both feet, and I had it, and it wasn't, serious, it wasn't, but it was painful. It was surgery, and I had total anesthetic and all of that. And it was like at 6:30 in the morning at Northwest Hospital, and the doctor gave me pain meds to take all that day. So we got home, and I took the pain, they gave me one in the hospital, and then I took them as she had prescribed. And that night, about 11 o'clock, as I kind of hobbled up the stairs to go to bed, I turned to my husband and I said, "This has been the best day of my life." And so I was lying in bed thinking, how come all days can't be as good as this day was? And these two characters came into my head. They just appeared in my head, and they came. I knew their names, George and Lizzie. I knew Lizzie's last name. I knew where they met, at a bowling alley in Ann Arbor, and I knew how they met, the circumstances. And
so it begins. Now this doesn't surprise me at all from my own experiences and all the writers I know. But so obviously, for the viewers who don't know, Nancy has interviewed a great many writers. It's one of the many hats you wear.
Yes.
You've probably heard this sort of thing from other writers, but when you heard it, did you ever think, "Come on"? Or did you believe it from your experience writing short stories?
Well, what I believed was that these two kids, because they were both, and one was a freshman in college, one was a first-year dental student, I think. Right. George was. I believed them. They had a sort of solidity, and I believed. I just wanted to know more about them.
Yeah.
And what I found myself doing was just thinking about them all the time. So I would, I go on these sort of walks every morning, and I walk by the sorority houses,
Yeah, yeah.
by the university, and I would think, what would have happened to me if I had joined a sorority when I was at the University of Michigan? And then, I would say, what would Lizzie think about all these sorority houses? I mean, they were so real that everything that I did had some reflection. I would think about them in those situations, and I just thought about them, and I would, think of a situation that they would be in, and then before I fell asleep, I would rewrite that situation in my head over and over, the same way I used to write poetry, just working out lines and tinkering, but only in my head.
You wrote down nothing?
Nothing.
How long did this go on for?
A few years.
A few years?
Yes, I just did not,
What the heck?
I know. So by the time, and then my head got so full of George and Lizzie that it really seemed like I needed to start debriefing and putting it down,
Right.
on paper, as it were, putting it down, sitting at my computer and getting it all out of my head onto the computer. And by the time I did that, it almost seemed as though all the decisions were made. Like I didn't have to decide anything. Everything, it's like they were there, and I know this sounds really hokey, but it's like they were telling me their story. It's like it was a biography that I was writing of them.
I love this. And for our viewers, this is how it works, okay? This is how creativity works. You are, at its best, like what you're describing, you're in collaboration with something. It's up to you what it is. But to say that you are, I always think that my responsibility in the creative process is interest, is curiosity. That's my main interest.
Right.
Just get interested, and then
Right.
the answers sort of come filtering in.
Yeah.
There's no other way to describe it.
So the hardest part was not deciding on the plot. I mean, the plot was there.
Right.
It was their lives together and apart. The hardest thing was translating those, like a sentence would be wonderful in my head. You know what this like. It was like perfection, a wonderful sentence. And I would type it, and there it would be on the computer screen, and it would be so lame. It would just, that translation from my head to the computer screen made it, was so discouraging. And then I'm a hugely critical of myself and my work.
Right.
And so I would read a sentence, an innocent sentence like, George took Lizzie's arm as they walked, or as they walked, George took Lizzie's arm. And then I would think, well, where did he take it? What did she do with one arm? What is he going to do now with this extra arm? I mean, just viciously attacking myself. And so that was the hardest part. So it wasn't that I didn't,
The hardest part was dealing with your own critical nature in the translation.
Yes.
And this doesn't surprise me either. We are always our own worst
Yes.
enemies.
Right.
The best thing you did was trusting your curiosity, but then you had to deal with this.
Yeah.
And did you get better at that? Did you start developing
No.
any? No, you just
did not.
fought through it.
And I have to say, I think it's so hard, but I think what a writer has to do is there has to be a balance. You have to come up with a balance between believing your own assessment of the work, believing that your work is good,
Right.
balanced with the realization that there's probably an editor out there who could help you make it even better.
Sure.
Which is what I was lucky enough to have. But even very, very late in the process, when I would read over a section or two, and I would think, oh my God, this has not, what am I doing? And luckily, I had a friend who I would send it to, I would say, should I really do this? Should I really go on? And he would always write back and say, yes, go on. Yes, it's worth it.
Well, all right, so Nancy, I got one more question for you.
Yes.
And what I want you to do is finish the sentence for me.
Okay.
If writing has taught me anything, it's taught me what?
So this is going to be predictable, all right? 'Cause
Okay.
you're gonna. So if writing has taught me anything, it's taught me the importance of reading.